Welcome to the Education Insights Focus on Behavior podcast. We're here to talk about all things behavior in the world of education. We take the science of behavior and break it down for educators into easily implementable steps, and we're excited to spend some time with you. Get ready to talk through behavior, what works, what doesn't work, and how we can all improve our work in schools so we as educators can be more fulfilled and our students can be more successful.
Hello, we're so excited to have you back with us. I am Dr. Selena Layden, and I am with you today with my lovely co-host, Daniel Irwin. Hi, Daniel.
Hello. Hello.
How's it
I
going
jumped the
today?
gun. I'm excited.
You are excited. It's an exciting day. And Daria Lorio-Barsten. Hi, Daria.
Hi, everyone.
How are you?
Living my best life.
That's a good place to be. And as always, we have our producer, Emily Muse. Hey, Emily.
Hello, hello.
All right. So, as we were getting ready for today, Daniel has some exciting news to share about his life. So I'm going to actually just turn it over to him.
Okay. So my daughter just got her learner's permit and has started doing some driving. And as part of the requirements for getting your learner's permit and getting your license, in Virginia, you have to do a 90-minute parent and or guardian and supervising adult and child activity. You have to go to the school and watch a 90-minute video. And the driver's ed teacher. Anyway, they're talking to us about setting up the car to be ready to drive. And I learned, one, you probably already know this one, you're no longer supposed to keep your hands at 10 and 2. It's dangerous, and for a couple of reasons. One, if the airbag goes off, you can end up like hitting yourself in the face. Two, it's too easy to like overturn.
Like overcorrect.
I really wish that our listeners could
Or
see
like
right now
just like
demonstrating this.
yes, you I guess you're at a higher risk of like doing too much turn at any given
Overcorrection in
time.
your
Overcorrection, but either way, the thing that really got me, because I already sort of knew about that one, was there's a new way to set up your mirrors. And so they had a name for it. I can't remember what it was, but you sit in the driver's seat and you lean your head all the way over to your window, right? And then you adjust the mirror out so you can like only the slightest amount of car you should be able to see with your head all the way over. And then you do the same thing for the passenger side. You lean over to the middle over the console and adjust it all the way out. And what it does, if you've got your rear view mirror framing up your back window all the way, it practically eliminates blind spots. And I tried it, and it was very hard at first, but I've gotten used to it. My wife has not gotten used to it. So there's a constant readjustment, adjust, readjust. But it's done a couple of things. One, it practically eliminates the blind spot. Two, when cars are behind you, their headlights don't shine in your side mirrors. Like it eliminates that too. So you're not getting, the lights bouncing back at you while you're trying to drive. And so from a behavioral standpoint, what became a challenge in thinking about how to like kind of reframe my brain to think and process the images, what I'm seeing in the mirrors, it's been reinforced because my quick check to check right next to me is much quicker than it was when my mirrors were adjusted closer in, and I'm not getting constantly just I live in a county where lots of people drive tall trucks, and so it was a real problem having headlights just hitting, your side view or rear view mirror, and it has practically eliminated that. So if you didn't know, now you know. There is a name for this mirror configuration. I can't remember it, but I have adopted it, and I'm liking it.
So I think the real question here is how's the driving going with your daughter?
She hit 50 miles an hour the other day for the first time, and it was an
Ooh.
emotional experience I have not had in a while. It all the strategies I talk to teachers about to help students regulate and manage and quantify their emotions. Like I had to be very mindful of my own heart rate and breathing and tone because new drivers like to hug the right line. Like that's That's
Which is
what
where
they
you're
do.
sitting as the
which is
passenger.
which is where, yeah, and also where the sidewalk is and poles and all kind and people on bikes. So it was one of those things like I just had to consciously say I'm going to give one word things. They're going to be the thing I want you to do, not what I don't want you to do. So it's left, right, faster, brake. That's it. When we were in a good spot, I would say that mark this, like you're right in the lane, you're doing the speed limit, you are where you need to be, lock this one in as where you should be. And then there wasn't much feedback other than maybe we don't talk about like your whole school day right now when you're going 45 miles an hour for the first time. Like we'll talk about that when we get home.
Well,
Left.
I want to say congratulations. You're still alive.
It's a big
She's
time.
still alive. We'll have to
She's
have an
doing really
update.
great.
I'm sure she
Listen,
is. I'm sure she is.
I have so many things that are going through my head. First of all, Daniel, you do not look a day older than 100 after this experience. So well done. Um, Secondly, I really hope Emily is investigating and fact checking right now, not fact checking, but figuring out what is indeed the name of the configuration, because we can always count on her brilliant mind and, sleuth skills to find all the information that we don't know ourselves. Um, and thirdly, I am still waiting to hear where am I supposed to keep my hands on the wheel now? If it's not 10 and 2, which is what I have been told,
You're
where
right.
am I supposed to put them?
8 and 4.
No way. I always was taught
Way.
11 and
I
1.
That's double punch if the airbag.
Nope, this is
Yeah.
what I was always taught because you don't have as
And
much control in the bottom. Now,
well,
I'm not gonna say I
so
always drive at 11 and 1, in fairness, but
that's the part I'm having trouble with. So like I do driving like that is pretty comfortable. You've got armrests and
it
like you
is.
because you don't need to make a lot of big movements at really most of the time, right?
But like intense
But
driving when there's like lots of traffic and rain, like I don't just like, I don't know.
yeah, it's not 100% success on my end either. Like I've caught myself a couple of times and I don't know, does it anyway.
So I actually want to talk about the blind spot that Daniel was talking about, and that kind of takes me to today's title of our episode, which is "There Must Be a Reason." And what we're referring to here is that behavior happens for a reason, that there is no, it is not random. It doesn't just happen because that there is a function and a reason for why things happen. So, anyone else want to jump in with what the function is or what a function is?
Well, I think, Selena, when we talk about there's a reason for mostly everything, right? Like when we talk about the function of the behavior in this context, we really are talking about the root cause or the why as to why are the humans doing what they're doing? What is the purpose of it? What are we all trying to either get or trying to get away from, right? And I think it's a really, really, perhaps the most important thing that we can talk about on this podcast because if we don't understand why something is happening or why someone is engaging in the behavior, like driving with a knee, for example, then it's really hard for us to actually do anything about it in a meaningful manner. And so it's important for us to understand and unpack the why behavior is happening and kind of what is the purpose of the behavior. What are they trying to essentially get out of that? I know I just really jump in, so I don't know if Daniel wanted to add anything to that.
I think you summed it up really nicely.
Why,
We're all
thanks.
doing stuff for a reason, right? And the more we can narrow that down and figure it out, the better we can be about helping people, right?
And I think it gets tricky because sometimes the reasons are pretty obvious, right? And other times they're not so obvious. And sometimes the why is not just one clear-cut why, but sometimes it's a combination of a couple of reasons why we do what we do.
I think we've all had that experience where we look at someone and we're like, what were they thinking? Why on earth would they have done that? And I think if we can actually get to the why or as close as we can to the why, it really does help us think through then what do we do next, right? Because I think sometimes want to or we do engage in this whole like, oh, I don't know, it just happens, it's random. But if behavior is random, then we can't do anything about it, honestly. If we can't predict it and we can't do anything after the fact, we really can't change behavior, and that's not true. So talk to me about that. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, and I was thinking about this, Selena. Sometimes behavior can look the same way, but have very different functions. And so if we're going to come up with interventions, then we need to make sure that our interventions match what is the need behind the behavior, right? Or what is the purpose? Otherwise, they're not really gonna be effective, right? Otherwise, it's going to be throwing oatmeal at the wall, which Daniel continues to try to convince us that it is an expression in this language. But I think we kind of question that.
I couldn't even convince Daria, so here we are. Um, yeah, I think one of the most powerful things we can do is help people narrow down their thinking around function, right? Like we know if we can help people sort of recognize, like you said, Daria, we're either trying to get to or get away from something, and it can get very, very complex. But if we can help people sort of start at the beginning and thinking that way, um, then we're giving people, teachers or admin or parents or whoever, like a process to start thinking about why is this happening? What are they trying to get? What are they trying to get away from? And when you have a process, it's I think there's a feeling of efficacy there that people get when you have a process, when you have a sort of step, like a way to step through a problem solve, that there's a feeling of efficacy there that I'm doing something, I'm thinking about it, and then I'm taking action on it. And maybe the behavior is improving, maybe it's not, but I know what to do if it does, and I know what to do if it doesn't. And I think sort of at least being able to quantify that or verbalize that a little bit can help when things do seem out of control or like there's nothing we can do about it. That just having that process can be really powerful and really just a great tool or a way to sort of help not feel that sense of overwhelmingness or that it's a problem bigger than something you can solve.
So how do you know what the function is?
Well, I think there's a shortcut and then there's the right way, right?
The long cut.
So that's right, long cut. I think really the only way we can learn it is mostly through observation and through trying to figure out and unpack a little bit of that three-term contingency, right? Of what's the behavior, what happened right before it, what happened afterwards, and then continue to watch for patterns and see, is there something that continues to occur and then the behavior appears to look similarly under the same context in the future, right? Like what's driving it, what's reinforcing it. I also think sometimes we jump to doing a whole lot of data collection with ABC charts and wonderful tools as well we should. But the shortcut, I think sometimes if we just ask people why they do what they do, sometimes they know. And sometimes they can tell you, I'm doing this because I'm hungry. I'm doing this because I don't like you. I'm doing this, whatever their reasons or rationales might be. I think it gets trickier when some of our friends, be they children or adult, give you the my favorite answer of, I don't know, right? And then the shortcut does not work. But then I think we do have to rely on that observation and that data collection. And again, as I said, just kind of looking for the patterns and looking to see what are the trend and the data say.
There's some really good like student like kind of self-assessment or preference assessments about kind of different ways of getting feedback or different ways that they like to get work done or interact with other people, right? And I think asking those kind of questions, I think for especially for children to say like why did we do that? Well, I was mad or da we can get into some of that, but some of those questions I think can really point us in the right direction without even thinking or asking about the challenging behavior, right? Like how do you like to interact with other people? How do you want people to tell you you're doing a great job? These kind of like not, they're just sort of, I don't know what the right innocuous kind of sounding questions, but they can really get at what's motivating a student and can at least sort of give us, like you said, Daria, that shortcut into why we think some of the challenging or interfering behavior might be happening.
And I think even asking folks, right, again, be they kids or adults, of what happened in a situation, right? Like walk me through what you were thinking, right, at the time that this occurred. Because I think the other part of that is sometimes we do get the answers of, I don't know, we've all encountered that. Sometimes I think we get answers that people think is the correct answer or they want to be the correct answer, but it may or may not be the actual function of their behavior, right? And so, like, I
Self-report is
think,
hard.
yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
And I think about sometimes like the kids who will give you all the answers other than their function is they really like attention from peers or adults, and that's why they do things. But they will list a slew of things why they did things. It does not include attention, right?
Yep.
So I think that it's important for us when we're thinking about other people's functions, or even if we're reflecting on our own function of our behavior, I think it's really important to triangulate our data and look at different sources and kind of say, okay, this is the ABC chart, right? That was observed under these conditions. These are the patterns that I'm seeing. This is what the student or the adult or whoever shared during the interview, and kind of connecting those dots. Because then I think we are much more likely to get to the function and to get to the root cause. And then I think sometimes we also have to be mindful about unpacking a really long learning history potentially, because
Mhm.
my function might be to escape a particular task. But I think it's sometimes important to ask additional questions of like, well, how did I get there? Why am I trying to escape from this task? And why is me running out of the classroom seems to be the way for me to do it? So I'd like to think that when we talk about behavior, we're inviting anyone who wants to play along, right, is to be a little bit of an investigator and kind of play the detective role and try to figure out a lot of different moving pieces. But I think, Selena, the starting point is asking, reflecting, why is the behavior happening? And then gathering the data in whatever form is needed to answer that question.
Yeah, and I think that question should be one we're always asking, whether things are going well, whether they're not going well. Why is this happening, right? Like, why are these behaviors occurring? Why are all my students randomly finally sitting in their desk after the fact that we've been working on this for 3 weeks? Or why is it that this one particular kid can't seem to turn their homework in? Those are the questions we need to be always asking. And then, to your exact point, what data do we have to support so that we can make decisions around that, to the point where we also may have to do a functional behavior assessment, and in some cases may have to even do a functional analysis. Of course, don't do that if you don't know how to do that, but those are more formal tools to help us get there, but we should still always be asking that question.
Well, and let's also make sure that we are as clear as we can be. We are looking for data and we're looking for all those data pieces.
Right.
It's not really about our opinion, right?
No,
Like
it's not
sometimes,
opinion based for sure, but we
right,
have to ask the question.
right. But sometimes I think if you ask people the question, why is that happening? I think sometimes people will come up with answer that may or may not align with the actual function of the behavior. So, yeah, I think we need to think through why is that happening, followed by what is the person trying to get as far as trying to escape from something or trying to get to something, right? And those somethings usually are not to get on your nerves or to get control. Those are not really the functions we're looking for.
Well, I think too, in kind of along the same lines, is really thinking of those indirect assessments that are often part of, or should be part of an FBA, and their reliability and landing on the right function once a complete FBA has been done. And somebody can fact check me on this, but it's not super high, right? Like the correlation between what you might see from a fast and what you might find if you do a complete FBA doesn't always align. And so I think part of it is it's difficult for people to remember things, right? Like it's very much based on, we've talked in a previous episode about like emotion, right? So there's emotion involved. There's the fact that we're human and our brains aren't perfect receptors and storers of information. And so when we start thinking back and going through and looking at some of those indirect assessments, we might get close, or we might sort of have that shortcut, but it really does take that observation and that sort of um, outside eye, and even having someone else come in and watch, right? Another set of eyes that's not involved with the situation to be able to really objectively um, help define behaviors or help, identify when and what's happening before, what's happening after, so that we get closer and closer to figuring out how to intervene and why the behavior's happening.
Yeah, for sure. And we all have biases, right? We all have those moments where we either think things are happening more than they are or less than they are. We miss things. You can't when you're teaching 22 little pumpkins, you can't catch every single thing that happens. When you're teaching more than 22 little pumpkins, you definitely can't catch everything that happens. And so having outside people come in and help, I think can be a really valuable component of this.
That's good. I've been thinking about something Daria said, and I just want to. So you mentioned, and maybe it was just sort of an example, but you mentioned, asking, let's say, kids, for instance, why did you do that? And you mentioned attention specifically as a function that they're not likely, like, I'm just trying to get your attention, or I just want you to look at me or pay attention to me. And I've been kind of mulling that over as we've been talking. And again, I got no data to back this up, but I can see where a kid would say, I don't like doing math. I don't want to hang out with this kid, right? Like, I'm trying to escape something, or I want to get to the iPad. I want to get to the playground, or I wanted his chocolate milk, whatever. But that attention component, and not, is it I don't understand, or I can't verbalize that I was looking for your attention and your time, your whatever? Or is there sort of a relationship component here where it's like, I don't feel comfortable being in a place of saying, like, I just wanted you to be with me for a minute. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know
So
why I've been thinking about it, but that example got me thinking about, like, what is that true that is more likely to be an attention function that they wouldn't identify or verbalize, like, right, as
see,
opposed to other functions.
See, Selena, I love it. This is why I mean I'm living my best life. Anytime I get anybody to think about anything is a win in my book. So thank you for that, Daniel. Thanks for reinforcing my verbal behavior on this video podcast. Um, but also, I think the answer to your question is C, all of the above, right? It depends on the kiddo. It depends, or again, the adult. It depends on, or a pumpkin, if we're talking about Selena's classroom.
They're all
Um,
pumpkins. They're all little pumpkins. It doesn't
I
matter
know,
how old
I
they are.
know. It's cute. It's good. I love it. Um, but I think it depends, right? Because I think first of all, one may not be aware how much attention drives their behavior. So there is that piece awareness of like, I may not know, but it might be very apparent to everybody else. The other piece is, as you said, I might not feel comfortable because it may not feel safe. Or the way in which you're asking me this question, depending whether it's a, hey, what happened? Or why did you do this? Right? Is going to also give you a very different kind of answer that you might be seeking. And third of all, there might be a certain level of vulnerability that's not connected to you, but is not something that one would want to reveal, period. Because I think about, so my kiddo is a middle schooler, right? And I think about secondary students a lot. And I think a lot how frequently they do what they do because they're seeking attention of one specific peer and not just peers in general. But who wants to tell the teacher, yeah, I was doing this to get attention from a person that I'm crushing on, right? That would mean that our relationship has to be so solid that you're ready to admit it and be super vulnerable. And in case you get overheard, you don't want the like, ooh, reaction from everybody else, right? So I think to circle back to your question, I think there could be a lot of different reasons why that particularly as a function might get a little bit tricky. Um, and I think the same probably can be said for other functions as well. I just think this is an example that It is something for us to think about because I think as much as we can work students' voice and choice into everything we do, the better the teaching and learning experience will be for everybody. But I think sometimes we have to just remember that not everybody feels safe sharing everything that they might be thinking.
I would also add, I think there is a lack of modeling component to this. So as adults, I actually cannot think of one time I've ever looked at someone, even that I feel very safe with, that I have a lot of trust and vulnerability with, that I've looked at them and said, you're just not paying attention to me enough, and I think I need some more attention right now. Like that's just not how we do that. And I
We make
wonder,
podcasts instead.
we do, absolutely. No, I think some of it is we don't see that model. And then the other part of it is I think it's easier to say, well, I don't want to be around her because she's annoying or he smells or they took my pencil or whatever. Like that's somebody else. That's an external like influence where attention I think is more of a me issue. And I may not be as likely to admit that.
Well, and Selena, and to your point, sometimes we don't want to share with other people because we don't want to share, right? Because we feel like it's not any business. I remember one time I taught a student who engaged in a very vulnerable conversation with me, and I shared that I'm always here for them. I am willing to listen and do everything that would be helpful. However, I personally felt this was early on in my teaching career. I personally felt that I was not the best fit for somebody who could navigate this particular situation. And so I asked the student if they would like to be excused and go to the school counselor because that was somebody who was much better trained and I had full confidence that would be able to support them in a more meaningful manner, right? And I was so proud of myself. I was thinking like, look at me collaborating, building other professionals up to my students. And my student looked me directly in the eye and said, I don't know her. She don't know me. And I thought, oh yeah, okay, this is not going to work as an intervention. And so I think this is where to kind of come back full circle, that piece of data collection and looking at things and analyzing is a really important part of that because of all the other pieces that while self-reports are really great pieces of data to triangulate with, sometimes we get into really murky waters with verbal behavior, self-reports, and just sometimes recognizing that people don't always want to share for whatever reason, as they have a right not to, right? So.
And just one more point to kind of drive this home. I do think your point earlier about, yeah, we get to the like they want to get attention or they want to escape from a certain activity or whatever to get that deeper perspective, I do think that's where having that conversation can be really helpful. Like, you always seem to engage in this behavior when it is time for reading out loud. Can we talk about why that could be? And they may be able to say, well, when I read out loud, the kids laugh at me and I don't like that, or, whatever the case may be. And I think we can get some better information to triangulate what we suspect or what we're getting from our other data.
Well, and to that point, jumping a little bit, few steps ahead, right? As we start thinking about interventions, and as we start thinking about interventions that are going to be best fit, I think it's only right for us to honor the students' experiences and their preferences as well. Because to your point, Selena, I could come up with an intervention that might match the function, but would not actually be effective under that particular context for that particular kiddo, right? And so lots of considerations to think further on and to build on after we have identified, or at least after we have a really strong hypothesis as to what the function of any given behavior is.
But you're absolutely right. I think that really critical early step is the why. Why is this going on? Because we don't know why, as we continually say, we keep throwing oatmeal at the wall. And we it just slides down. We don't know what's going to happen next. So I think that brings us to the end of our conversation. But we have two things. One, Emily has been hopefully looking for the answer to our question about the mirrors.
I have, and so we have an official confirmed fact So this is a real method. It is called the Blind Zone Glare Elimination Mirror Method, and that is coming to you from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. So you can look that up. You can see that in the show notes and learn all about it for yourselves.
All the interesting
The
things that you learned.
BZGERM. What?
What?
Emily, I
That'll
do
help you
not
remember
know.
it.
I do not know what we would do without you.
Oh, Emily totally keeps us straight. So thank you, Emily, for fact checking us today. She can put the link to that in the show notes if you really want to dive deeper into that topic. But with that, Daria has our commercial for today. And as a always reminder, these are just resources that we find cool, interesting, helpful, useful. We don't get paid for them. We are not sponsored by them, but we do think that they are things that could be useful to our listeners. So, Daria, take it away.
Yeah, so today we're going to look into the Iris Center module. Iris Center comes to us from Vanderbilt University, and they have a plethora of resources online. What I really appreciated is that, you get Daniel, myself, and Selena in a room, you throw in Emily, we talk about all sorts of things, and we sometimes go down rabbit holes of different concepts. But in case you wanted to take a deeper dive into any of the things that we talk about, whether it's function-based thinking, whether it is the science of behavior, whether it is how to address some of the interfering behaviors in the classroom, Iris Center really has thoughtfully put together some modules that are not short, but they do give you a lot of essential information with lots of real life applications. So if you're an educator, or if you're not an educator and just happen to be tuning in, that is something that I encourage you to check it out. So we will add it to the show notes, but that is Iris Center at Vanderbilt University.
And just to add in there, those are free, and you can access them anywhere. They are on demand, so you don't have to like sign up for a class or anything. You can watch them whenever you find the time or have an interest. So, all right, with that, thanks everybody. I hope that you enjoyed the topic today. Again, there must be a reason for everything that happens. We just have to figure out what that reason is. So, with that, I hope that you all have a wonderful day, and thanks again.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Education Insights Focus on Behavior. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can join the conversation by emailing us at cbis@odu.edu, visiting www.cbisva.org, or following us on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Blue Sky at CBISVA. Special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for their support of this project.